It seems that these days just about everybody wants some sort of extraction shooter, and funnily enough, as one dies, another game morphs into one, and we get to have a bit of a talk about genre trend chasing and the overall state of the industry, because it does seem like a lot of teams are making fairly expensive games that really kind of won't work. As in, there can only be so many successes within this genre because it's just too damn saturated. We saw it happen with Battle Royales, now it is happening again. So in a world where there is DMZ, where Hazard Zone dies and everything's going on, just why does the industry follow rather than lead? And why should you absolutely check out today's sponsor? Notion! Notion literally runs my business and my life. It has done so for years, and I'm thrilled that they're sponsoring. I've got a freebie for you today. It's my own personal daily work system. You can sign up for Notion for free using my link down below, and then you can just duplicate my template over to your own Notion and get started with it. And there's so many other templates as well, covering anything that you need to help run your life or your work. And as for what Notion is, well, it is the ultimate connected workspace for your notes, your documents, your tasks, really whatever you can imagine. It's absolutely amazing, both solo and with your team. So here's my daily planner system, right? And I love this thing, it keeps me sane. So every day's page has a few habits that I like to track. It automatically creates a new page every day. So when I flip my laptop open in the morning, I know what page to open. And there's sticky notes, there's also my bullet journal. Now it's really cool. It has automatic timestamps, and there's a little time blocking tool as well. So this is actually where I work by default, and that helps me just focus on what matters. And the timestamps, those actually help keep me sharp and self-reflective. Time blocking is also so easy. I just drag the little task into the time blocking area, and that helps me plan my day out realistically, and over time get way better at estimating how long it takes for me to do things. And it's done wonders for my work and life balance, and hey, it gets you guys more content. So you can sign up for Notion with my link below, and I'll also have a link to my template, and you can duplicate that to your own Notion in a single click. So be it your team or just yourself, Notion is the absolute best. Absolutely, give them a shot. Thanks them for sponsoring, and let's go. To really start us off, we have the news of the Cycle Frontier. They said on Twitter, prospectors, today's news we share with a heavy heart, the Cycle Frontier will shut down September 27th, 2023. Of course, this is a game from Jaeger, if you remember Spec Ops: The Line, a game that has been much talked about because of its narrative chops. Yeah, this is what they ended up doing, which was quite bizarre. So then, this game launched in June of 2022, very much chasing that Tarkov high. Yes, it was a free-to-play extraction shooter. Of course, you'll remember just a few months ago, we did another video on a general death of live services as we had another wave of them going. I wonder if this is just happening again. And for the game itself, basically it was the usual thing. People like PvP challenge, they like having a varied set of environments, PvE can get a lot of engagement, and the loot is fun, right? It's a genre that does work because the likes of Tarkov are indeed really fun. So what happened with this game is people were beginning to take notice, maybe suggesting that work was like being put into the game, that it could actually start to rival the likes of Tarkov. It got coverage from Jack Braggs and quite a lot of other people within the shooter genre over on YouTube, and I think a little bit of Twitch. Yet now it's dead, and the reason why is the sad reality that it is not financially viable. Now, to their credit, Jaeger are actually handling this really well. We shouldn't forget that. Real money spending is disabled right now, and for anybody who bought anything in the last 2 weeks, there are refunds. They're now throwing all the in-game progression and gear at people to make sure they can just enjoy the game for its final period of life, and they have said that they will be unable to keep these servers available in such a way that people could play it offline and on private servers. This is because of back-end integration and costs. And the reason why here is really simple. They had massive growth at launch. They had massive issues at launch, which did result in some of that massive growth going away, and then the game never managed to stabilize. It's always that thing, you see the big spike in Steam charts, and then it's a question of how long will it fall for and how hard will it fall. And that must be, for these developers, one of the most terrifying feelings as they check their Steam numbers every day to see, how do the tea leaves look? Are we screwed? And of course, like all big pushes into a new genre, there will be winners, there will be losers, there will be casualties. This is totally a case of the extraction shooter being a relatively new genre, and that's just naturally what's going on. And in some ways, this is inevitable, especially if you are free to play. At the end of the day, people who like extraction shooters generally will be playing Tarkov, right? They will try out another game. For another game to actually win them and make them transition over in a way where they will actually be playing it for months and months and months on end, any new entry to the market will have to try so much harder. It was like that with Battle Royales, where we saw so many games just into the graveyard so damn quick, and perhaps it's the likes of Naraka Bladepoint that were able to go out there and be different enough to actually grab in some people and manage to be sustainable. All of these things, of course, may sound like business concerns, right? The idea that, you're trying to go into a new genre, you've got to unseat the incumbents somehow, this all feels very businessy, but actually from players, it's the sort of thing that we're now beginning to also be a bit suspicious and perhaps a bit burnt out. And that is what leads me to the situation with Arc Raiders. And it is the recent switch that Arc Raiders has made that raised a lot of eyebrows with their own community. So, is this trend chasing in a sort of cheap way, or is this just naturally how the game developed because they ended up thinking it was fun? Much like how, if you look at Apex Legends, well, Titanfall 3 was something that they were prototyping, and while they were prototyping Titanfall 3, they actually did a miniature, small version of Apex, and they found themselves just having more fun playing what would eventually go on to become Apex, and that is how that game appeared. An experiment informed by a genre, but actually something where EA didn't know that Apex Legends was in development until it was already a few months in, and Titanfall 3 was already dead. So the situation with Arc Raiders then. This was announced at the Game Awards 2021. Essentially, you've got small teams of players who will be zipping around the place fighting mechs. Really big mechs, right? Almost a sort of mechanical Monster Hunter thing going on, but as a third-person shooter. I think the art style always quite strong. It just it came off pretty well to people, I think. Now, to say then that people are rather disappointed that this has turned into a PvPvE extraction shooter would be setting it, putting things kind of lightly. Because yes, you will be fighting, it's in the same world, you'll be fighting small mechs and players, not exactly sure about the gigantic mechs of the past, and people are definitely disappointed in this, right? People kind of wanted a science fiction Monster Hunter from a bunch of ex-DICE developers, right? And now, looking through the YouTube comments, looking through all the other places, it's people feeling kind of heartbroken that this concept of a game is something they really liked. They thought that a sort of shooter Monster Hunter could work, but they've, they just feel really burnt out by this. As an example, you've got Division 2, Battlefield, DMZ, Tarkov, many others in this genre. So that's true, right? There is more and more and more. And that's actually led to a lot of people perhaps thinking that the owner of Embark, Nexon, that they perhaps have done some sort of mandate to do this in the big new hot shiny genre. And certainly I know that when you look at the venture capital space, VC money also does like extraction shooters. It's just a lot of the people making the business decisions, they do see this as the big new trend. So what's actually happening then? Well, the extraction shooter is a thing. We'll be getting more of it. It has came a long way, though, since the two things that really kicked it off, which are Escape from Tarkov and Hunt Showdown. These are games that have got serious staying power and extremely dedicated communities. These evolved from the Battle Royale, right? Which is why it was very easy for a lot of games that were channeling Battle Royale energy to just pivot over towards this space. And of course, as is tradition, the more flexible AA companies and some of the larger indies did try to go in here as well. Obviously, we've got Jaeger with the Cycle Frontier, and Team 17 and Small Impact, who have done Marauders, and even some solo developers getting in here with the likes of Road to Vostok. Now, the market has responded because we are seeing serious investment here. As an example, Jaeger had some pretty serious investment. And even some fantasy spin-offs from these larger companies, like the situation with Dark and Darker, allegedly from Nexon, like their version of that, that they were wanting to get involved in this genre, right? Then, of course, we got the AAAs trying to get in with some of this. Now, of course, Call of Duty Warzone, that started because they put a mode into Black Ops. I've forgotten the name of the mode, but it was a battle royale inside Black Ops. Well, of course, we got Firestorm within Battlefield 5, right? Firestorm that was trying to give us this whole battle royale experience. And hilariously, in Battlefield 2042, they gave us Hazard Zone. Now, Hazard Zone was actually meant to be a true pillar of this game. It was so unplayed after launch that they basically cancelled the mode. And when you look at some of the creative decisions, like what they initially did with operators instead of classes, those all seemed extremely geared towards Hazard Zone. So Battlefield 2042, like, it was supposed to be a battle royale at one point, a really big one from what we understand. Then they pivoted towards this new Hazard Zone thing, and it just ended up being a massive shit show, such that it's only now that the DICE developers, after putting in a lot of work, have got that game to a relatively, like, healthy and stable state with just, you know, more content, better maps, and a redoubling on both classes and 64-player maps. Kinda wild. Then with Modern Warfare 2, you have DMZ, and I think they clearly consider that to be a revenue driver because they're monetizing it. It's just one of those things where if you purchase the microtransaction, it's not the largest amount of like power or gain, but it is enough that you'll feel good if you have it. It does make me think, you've got Warzone. Will they ever try to move DMZ out of being a Modern Warfare 2 experiment and into something else? I wonder. Then, of course, we've got Marathon from Bungie, which, I mean, Marathon, that's a legacy IP, that's pre-Halo, and yes, it is a very stylish-looking live service extraction shooter, because I'm sure whenever you watch maybe those Mandalore gaming videos on the plot and the story of the old Marathon games that Bungie did before Halo, I'm sure you thought, oh, live service extraction shooter, that's where we're going. Of course, this went really quite bad with Marathon, because right now in Destiny, its PvP community feels ridiculously left behind. And it is fair to say that they really have left their PvP community behind in a pretty rough way. Of course, you then look over at Sony and you find out that Sony are heavily focusing on their live service titles, which of course will have people be a little bit suspicious, because as much as it's that thing with live service titles, everyone is suspicious and grumbling and begrudging whenever they're announced, for the most part. It's a rare thing that they actually do get that massive sticking power and the people sort of accept them. But to go back to the thing that inspired today's story, Arc Raiders. Is it trend chasing, or is it the natural process of game development? Because the thing here is, extraction shooters are actually really fun. And the stakes of an extraction shooter are really fun. Think about the difference between Rogue and the new roguelite genre. The reason we call it roguelite for the most part is that you do a run of the game, you gain power, and that power will carry into your next run. That's the case in like Dead Cells, Enter the Gungeon, so many entries in this genre. And it's just that thing. Rogue was pretty crazy back in the day because of the stakes. So more classic Rogue, like I guess Rogue clone, very, hard rule set Rogue games, they have that tension. But the reason why the roguelike, or I suppose roguelite as some people would call it, the reason why that really picked up is because you are able to marry both long-term progression for your character and all the strengths of any roguelike game, all right? So it's a very interesting thing. The extraction shooter is basically doing that to the battle royale genre. And that is a very, very powerful thing if you want to make something that's a live service that people will actually stick around with and play with for a long time. Because hey, what if your battle royale progression was more than just cosmetics? Yeah, you can see that being good for people. So while them moving to extraction shooter may come off as being a purely mercenary thing, it doesn't necessarily line up with the evidence of how Embark actually make games. So, in August 2022, they announced the game would be delayed until 2023. And this is because they had been internally testing their other game, The Finals, and they found that it was much easier to essentially find the fun in The Finals than it was in Arc Raiders. And they also found that they just couldn't make two games at once. Now, The Finals is getting its closed beta tests. It's been having that for a few months with, by the way, excellent feedback. So that's actually quite exciting. It's a very small scale, explicitly so. It's a hyper fast extraction shooter. It's team deathmatch sized, but based on capturing and then extracting the objective. It's, I mean, yeah, it just looks really fun. It's been testing super well. And here's what they ended up saying. Over the course of the spring, we started to concept and prototype a PvP-focused game mode in Arc Raiders, in that universe, and we're eager to spend more time in that before the game's release. This extra time will allow us to do that. You then fast forward to May 2023, and they said that over the course of the development, it has taken the shape of what we believe to be a truly promising PvEVP survival extraction shooter, a game that stays true to the Arc Raiders universe and that we're having a blast testing internally. So from those communications, it does sound like they were just prototyping things, and they were testing out what modes are fun, what mechanics are fun. Now, does that mean, like, even if this happens from a natural perspective, does that mean that they're screwed, that they're moving into an crowded genre and that they're chasing a trend? No, it doesn't mean they're not doing that. I mean, you could even argue that making a science fiction Monster Hunter game, that is trend chasing given the success of Capcom recently. So, you know, words like this, like trend chasing, they're useful when we're talking about a big idea, but we got to be careful when we start applying them to all the specifics. I think many would have said that Apex Legends was trend chasing. Turned out it wasn't, because it was really good and it had staying power. So I think in most cases, people are probably making games for the right reasons, at least in the earlier waves. I think that's where to borrow a businessy term, that's where it feels like a blue ocean opportunity, right? Where it's like, oh, the extraction shooter, this is a new thing. All we developers get to riff in this and do our own take. I think then the problem is the games that come out like way after that. You know, way after that feel like they were greenlit because some successes happened, rather than a more pure joy and enthusiasm over the genre, right? I think that's something that people began to feel with Battle Royales. If you think about games like Suicide Squad, Kill the Batman, I think a lot of people think like, oh god, what the hell's going on there? You look at all of the long line of games that Anthem takes a place in, and that all felt like total trend chasing. Even a bunch of that live service trend chasing that EA mandated down to BioWare, that led to BioWare completely cocking everything up for years, which wasn't necessarily good. So overall then, trends, capitalize on them, but try to lead them rather than chase them. I think that overall is the thing. But the problem with trends, though, is that everybody wants one. Embark was founded in 2018. Escape from Tarkov appeared in the scene in 2017. Hunt was in 2018. And from that point, the clock starts ticking, right? Those games are successful because they are exceptionally fun and inherently create like little narratives, right? It's like why battle royales are so fun and create very memorable moments. So it's absolutely no surprise that there will be a whole bunch of follow-ups. People thinking, that's cool, but I think I can do something new with this. I think I can do something special with that. So they look at this relative blue ocean and they jump in. And that's kind of how the trend starts. I think it's just when it gets to the degree of it kind of taking the piss and things just seeming like a big budget but safe and uninteresting entry into a trend, that is when we then just start to think, why are you doing this? And then game development cycles are so long that you could think that you're moving in a decent time, but if your game takes 2 or 3 years to come out, like, it's going to be late versus the people who started that trend. So it's an interesting thing. There is every chance that Arc Raiders may redefine some of this genre. Maybe it turns out that the third person, little bit of like Monster Hunter-ishness in fighting those mechs, yeah, that could work. I could see that maybe appealing to a lot of people who don't want the uber tense FPS, but we'll just have to wait and see. So I wonder what the next trend is. But I suppose if I knew that, then, well, that would be some pretty next level knowledge to have. That is it for today. Absolutely be sure to check out today's sponsor. I use Notion every single day. Like literally, this is Notion. The whole company runs on Notion. Notion is fantastic. You can check out my template for free. All of that is linked down below. And a thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. That's it for me. I'll see you next time.